In this video, we're going to be focusing on knitting the hood for our hooded cardigan, and then basically just doing the little bits of finishing that are left to do, and our hoodie will be ready to wear. So if we look at our pattern here for the hood, remember we have knitted our body of our sweater. We've finished with 6 rows of just straight stockinette here at the top, and we're ready to start our hood. Now for our first 2 rows, however, on our right side row with the knit, we are going to bind off our first 20 stitches. That would be the 20 stitches that we have here for our buttonhole area. We're going to knit those, or bind those off, and basically just stop knitting the buttonhole area and just focus on the hood for the rest of the body of the cardigan. So let's start. We're going to bind off these first 20 stitches. So I'm going to knit 2, and then pass my first one over the second one, and continue doing this for a full 20 stitches. So it's 2 bound off. Oops. And I have already removed all my markers. I probably should have left them in there so I would know and give me a good idea of where to stop in case I lose track in counting my bound off stitches here. But you get the idea. We'll just bind off those first 20 stitches for the buttonhole area, and then just continue knitting the rest of the row. On the wrong side row, you'll bind off the first 20 stitches on that end, and then purl back, and that will get you to where we're going to start knitting the hood. So let me do that, and I'll meet you back here and show you what it looks like. Alright, so here's what we have. We've got the first 20 stitches, which are the buttonhole area, bound off on both sides here. And this may look funny now with a big flap like this in front, but remember this is going to get folded over and sewn together, so you'll just have a small, probably 1.5 inch spot there. That's the flap where the buttons go. So this center section here of, is it 66 stitches, is what's going to become our hood. And basically all you're going to do for the next 61 rows is just knit stockinette stitch. Knit the knit sides, purl the wrong sides until you get to the end. So I'm going to do that, you do that as well, and I'll meet you back here once we've got all 64 rows completed, or 63 rows completed, and I'll show you how to finish off the hood. Alright, so the hood is now basically pretty finished. We've done all the actual knitting of the hood, and now we're just going to do a little finishing. We're kind of coming into the home stretch on our sweater here. You should have ended with a right side row, which means our next row is going to be a wrong side row, and that's going to be key because we're going to do some seaming here, and we want that seam to be on the inside where you can't see it. So what you need to do is, if you're using a long circular needle like this, is separate your stitches in half. You should have 66 stitches on here, so you'll put 33, one on each side of the needle. Okay, on your wrong side row. And we're going to do what is called a 3-needle bind off. Now I need to grab a 3rd needle here. Okay, and I'm just going to use one of the ends of my adjustable needles here. And we're basically going to do kind of what we did when we finished the pockets. Remember when we picked up stitches from both of the needles on the pocket to attach them together? We're going to do the same thing, except after we knit the stitches off, we're then going to bind them off as if we're doing a regular bind off. Okay, so we are going to, this is the wrong side, we're going to purl here, so we're going to purl 1 stitch, oops, off of each needle. And I find it easier to grab the back one first, and then grab your front one since that's where your yarn is, and purl those 2 together. Slide them off the needle, then do the next one, pick up the back one first, then the front one, purl those 2 off, and then lift that first one over and bind off that stitch just like you would with a regular bind off. That's a 3-needle bind off. So named because it uses 3 needles to bind off the stitches. So we're just going to continue doing that, taking the back stitch first, then the front stitch, purling them together, sliding them off, and then taking this previous stitch before, oops, and binding it off. Maybe. It is a little tricky to maneuver all those 3 needles together there, but there we go. So just continue to do that until you've bound off your last stitch, and your hood should be seamed together. Now it's going to look a little skinny, but don't worry because we are going to attach another piece to the front over here. So you'll bind those off, and then your next step in your pattern is going to be knitting the front brim. This is a separate piece that we knit, and then we sew it to it later, and it's not difficult. I'm not going to go through how to actually do it because it's pretty simple. You basically just cast on 22 stitches onto your needle, and you knit stockinette stitch for 127 rows to make one long 22-inch wide piece that's going to go all the way around the entire front brim. It's going to be folded in half because that's where we're going to put our cord through, so that when you fold it in half and sew it together, you'll have room for the cord to go through for your drawstring. And it will be the same width as your front little section here. Once we fold this over for our buttons, then you'll attach it here and have a hole for the string to come out. Okay, so that's pretty simple. So that's basically it, and then we'll get into some finishing things here in a few minutes. So bind off your hood and then knit your 22 stitches for 127 rows, and I'll join you back here to help you put it all together. Alright, we are now ready to finish our hooded cardigan sweater. So let me show you what I've done here. I've made a few things. Here is the 22 stitches by 127 rows. That's going to be the brim of the hood. I've also made the cord. I didn't show you how to do this either, but it is just 3 stitches, and then you knit them until they are 48 or 49 inches long. And because of the nature of stockinette, where it likes to curl up on itself, it actually curls into this nice little tube-shaped cord. That'll be the drawstring for your hood. So the first thing we need to do is to take our hood brim, and I've steamed this. I steamed my entire cardigan. I think it's easier to work with when I'm doing the finishing if I've kind of blocked it a little bit, just kind of giving it a light steam to kind of relax it so it doesn't curl up so much on itself. But we're going to take the front brim and fold it in half, and we're going to seam down this side to turn it into kind of a tube itself, which is where the cord is going to be placed. I've already started seaming on the other end here, and I'm just going to show you quickly how I do that. I'm just doing a mattress stitch. Which is fairly simple. Okay. It's just a mattress stitch. So what I'm going to do is stick my needle in. Bring it closer here for you to see. Needle in, go under a couple of stitches, and pull it through. And then I go back to the other side where my yarn came out the last time, go in that same hole, pick up 2 stitches from the other side, pull it, and when I tighten it up it gives you an invisible seam there. If you look, you can't really see where it actually was seamed together from the outside. Now, of course, from the inside, you've got a little bulky area here where the 2 rows are pulled together into a seam, but you'll never see that, it's only inside. I like seaming with a mattress stitch because it does give you such an invisible seam like that. So, one more time, we'll go in where we came out the last time, and I'm doing this not on the very edge row because it's kind of a gross looking row there anyway. Come in 1 row from the outside so that you can actually see the stitches. Go in, pick up 2 stitches, pull it through, back to the other side where it came out, pick up 2 stitches, and pull it closed. Simple as that. So I'm going to seam down this entire side, and then we're going to attach it to the hood, so I'll meet you back here in a few minutes. Okay, so as you can see here, I have folded the brim in half and sewn it together, and I have started attaching it to the front of the hood. Now what I like to do is use my little clippy markers to kind of use them as pins to kind of just place it where I want to, put the clip in, and that kind of holds it there so I can kind of see how to space it out. I've clipped this to the front of the hood, and I've actually already sewn one side of it together, so you can see that's how it looks when you're completed, and you've got a little tube here that you're going to put your cord into later on. When I put this together, when I'm seaming it, I like to start in the center and work down one side, and then come back to the top and work down the other side again. So I've already done this side, so I'm going to start this next side, and I'm just going to get my needle started here. What I do when I'm seaming with a separate piece of yarn like this is I just leave a tail on the back, I pull my yarn through, and then later on I'll go back and weave those ends in when I'm weaving it on my other ends. But I'm going to go ahead and remove this marker, and I'm just going to do the same mattress stitch that I did when I seamed the edge of the brim together. Just going to pick up a couple stitches, come back over here, pick up a couple stitches, go back over to where I came out before, pick up a couple stitches, and just continue seaming until I've made it all the way down this other side. Now, I'll continue working on that off camera here. I want to show you a few other things here that are going to be important. Now, we are going to place a little ribbed section on the front of our pockets to give us a little bit more room, and it finishes off that pocket edge. Okay, now according to your instructions, I've already done one here. You just pick up 30 stitches across the pocket front, and then you knit in 1 by 1 rib for 8 rows, I think. Yes, 8 rows according to our pattern. And then you bind off, and when that's done, we will then sew the edges of these to our front of our sweater, and that will give us the little pocket area to stick your hand in. So I've already done one. I'm going to show you how, on this other side, how we pick up our 30 stitches. Now you use a size 7 needle for this. And basically all you do is stick your needle through that edge stitch that's along the edge of the pocket here. Take your working yarn, and I leave a little tail there so I can sew that in later on, and just pull that stitch through and create a stitch. And we're just going to continue working up the edge of the pocket here. Oops. Wrapping your needle, pulling a stitch through, all the way up the edge of the pocket. Now you're supposed to get 30 stitches out of here, and you can count the rows along the side if you want to make sure you get your 30 stitches evenly spaced. I kind of just, I'm not one to prepare ahead of time, so I kind of just count as I go along and kind of fudge it if I have to, and put a few extra stitches in here or there if I need to, or skip some spaces if I need to, or sometimes if I get to the end and I have too many, I may have to take some stitches out or redo it. Probably if I counted ahead of time and spaced it out, I probably would save myself some time, but I'm impatient. But that's basically it. You just pick up stitches like that, 30 of them along the edge, knit in one by one ribbing for 8 rows, bind off, and then sew your edges to the front of the cardigan. I'll show you that whenever I'm getting ready to do all the rest of the finishing of sewing my pieces together. But that is the pocket front. So I will work on that. I will finish sewing off the brim of my hood here, and then I'll meet you back here for the last few little sewing and finishing things that we need to do. So the edge of my pocket is now finished, and I've actually gone ahead and stitched it down on either side to actually make the pocket here. Now the next step that we need to do is seal up the inside of this pocket. You can see here, remember it was just a flap, we made an extra flap, and so it's still open on the inside here, so we just need to basically sew this down. And I'm going to show you quickly how I do that. Not very complicated at all. I'll just thread my needle here. Okay. All I do is just kind of put the yarn through a couple times here just to kind of get it started. Okay. And I'm going to, I don't know what kind of stitch this is even called, but I'm basically just going to catch the edge of the pocket here and then go underneath and just kind of catch into those loops. I don't want this to come all the way through to the front because I don't want you to see a line of stitches on the outside of it, so I'm just going to kind of catch it and then kind of catch into those loops, not going all the way through to the front. And you can see that there. Catch the edge of the pocket, and then catch, and just continue working the pocket this way. And if you're careful, you'll see on the other side here we don't see any stitches coming through. That's what I want. I just kind of want to close the pocket up with an invisible seam here. Okay, so that part is pretty simple. We are really close to finishing this sweater now. It seems like it's taken forever, but here we are. So you'll finish your seam like that. The next thing you need to do is deal with the the flaps on the front where the buttons go, and then your buttonhole side as well. Now this side I've already finished. This is the side where the buttons are going to go, and I've just folded it in half, seamed across the bottom, and then all the way up the side too, in the same manner that I'm closing up this pocket, just catching the edge, and then catching a little stitch, and just seaming all the way up, all the way to the top. Now when you get to the top here, you're going to attach your buttonhole section to the edge of your brim of your hood as well. And all I did there was just do the same mattress stitch around the back. Stopped here in the middle because I want to leave a hole. You need to leave a gap here of at least a few stitches, because that is where your cord is going to come out for your drawstring. So you do need to leave a hole here. So I kind of did maybe a third of the stitches on the front, stopped, and then started over here, did the last third of the front, and then finished over here to the side as well. Okay, so it kind of joins together with a little hole in the front so we can put our cord in. Okay? On this other side, where the buttonholes are, before we fold it over and seam it, we need to attach our buttonholes together. And that is very simple. You just fold your section over. Get my needle threaded here again. Fold it over and match up the two buttonholes. Remember, we had this section opened up and there were two buttonholes. When we fold it over, we're going to match those together. And then I'm just going to take my yarn and go into each stitch. I do it from the back to the front. Go through the stitch on the side, and then actually into the buttonhole. And I'm going to do this in every stitch around the edge of the buttonhole. So there were 4 stitches at the top, 4 at the bottom, and then 1 on either side. So you'll have 10 stitches around. And basically all this does is kind of just whip stitch it together and just reinforces the edge of that buttonhole so it doesn't stretch out whenever you're putting your buttons through it. But you see, it's as easy as that. Into the stitch from the back to the front, and then down into the buttonhole itself. And you see it just kind of strengthens that buttonhole there. Okay. Now once I've gone all the way around, I just come into the back and just kind of weave in my ends here a little bit. And just go back and forth into some of these stitches here, and then I'll just snip that off now that it's done. Now, once all of your 6 buttonholes are done, then you're going to do the same thing with the front flap here on the buttonhole side. You're going to seam it together. And I'll show you a couple stitches with that. As I said, I did it the same way that I did the inside of the pocket. I just folded it over, catch the edge stitch, and kind of just catch some of those stitches on the inside, because we don't want it to actually show through on the front. And we're just going to keep moving up. Sewing that together. I'm going to move kind of quickly here to get this done. I'm sure you don't want to sit and watch me seam this whole thing together. And even though there are a few seams in this, I find this to be much easier than actually knitting sleeves and hood and body all separately and then seaming the whole thing together. For some reason, I think when I tend to sew things together, I tend to sew them a little tight maybe. And sweaters I've made in the past that have been seamed together, I find it difficult to wear them. I feel like the underarm section is always kind of tight feeling. Doesn't have much give, maybe because I've seamed it too too tightly or something. I always have a hard time with it. And I like this because since the sleeves were just knit together, they're still nice and stretchy in the underarm section, and it has a lot of nice give to it there. So I'm just going to, here on the edge, I'm going to kind of do a back stitch. I'm going to come through and then go back down the hole that I went through previously. And just kind of attach this end together now. Once I get this all sewn here, I'm going to attach it to my other section here, remember to leave a hole for your cord to come through, and that will be all of our seaming that we have to do basically. Now, there is one little section left to do, and that is the underarm. Remember, our underarm stitches were left live on stitch holders still. We have like a big gaping hole here, and we need to close that up. We're going to close this up the same way we did the hood. We're going to do a 3-needle bind off. Now, to do this 3-needle bind off, though, we want our seam to be on the inside so you can't see it. So, I'm going to turn this inside out. I'm going to do this from the wrong side so that you can't see it. Okay. And I want my needles to be facing this direction because I'm going to start binding off these inside stitches. So, I'm going to just pick up these stitches, back off the stitch holder like we've done many times before in this same sweater, and then do a 3-needle bind off to close this section together. Now I've already done the other side here. I can get it all turned around here. I've already done the other side, and you can see 3-needle bind off. It makes a nice looking seam there, kind of almost invisible seam there. The problem is when you've done this, you have 2 small holes. You've bound off the 14 stitches here in the middle, but it leaves 2 small gaping holes here on the side. All I've done with that is just gone in the inside with my yarn and just stitched those little holes closed. And that's all you have to do for the underarm. Okay, so I will finish seaming all this stuff together. I'll be back to show you how to do the insert the cord, and we will be done with our hooded cardigan. Alright guys, here we go, the very last thing. All of our seams are done. All we need to do is insert our cord into our hood. Now what I've done here is I've attached a little safety pin to the end of it. And we're going to put it into the hole here, and this safety pin is going to help us just basically work it up through this entire tube. It kind of gives you something to kind of hold on to and push and pull up through the hood. So just insert it in the end and then work it through. Probably a little fatter safety pin would have been better. This one's kind of sticking through some of the stitches here. I'm just going to work it all the way through to the other side. And I just kind of push it, grab it with my other thumb from the outside, and kind of just tug it a little bit just to pull it up through there. Alright, we're almost to the end here, and I can stick my fingers in this hole and kind of grab it, and there it is. And then I'll just take my safety pin off the end of it. And there is our cord coming through both sides of the hood here. Looks pretty nice. Alright, so that's basically it. There are a few loose ends, like here at the end of the cord, that I just need to weave into here, and a few odds and ends here and there to weave in, and then sew the buttons to the front. And these are the buttons that I have chosen for this. I think they go pretty well. And your pattern tells you where to sew these buttons to it. If you're doing the small, they go at rows 13, 37, 61, 85, 109, and 133. If you're doing medium or large, it'll tell you exactly where to put them. But sew the buttons on, and we've got ourselves a hooded cardigan. So that's it. I'll finish all this up. I'll give you one last look at what my finished product looks like. I'm sure yours will look much better than mine. But I really enjoy how this self-striping yarn did. I'll give you a full-length shot of it here once I get it all completed. But yeah, that's it.